Hello, welcome to another episode of The Legend of Nobunaga. In today's episode, we're going to face the Battle of Sawayama. Now, this battle isn't quite as historical as I would have liked it to be. It's more historical than the Battle of Noda Fukushima, which we faced last time, so it's good in that regard. We can see here it's against the Asakura Azai army, which is historical. Actually, maybe it's not. It depends how you look at it. We're facing forces that are part of the Azai army, and the Asakura were sort of involved in this battle as a whole, but they didn't actually fight in it. They were part of the influences which caused this battle to be like how it was. I'm being a little bit esoteric as I speak there, so I'll explain more about the true battle once we're inside the level. It's a very interesting level, this one, actually.
Our planning is done. Let us prepare for war. Sir!
So hopefully I'll have a little chance to talk about what's actually happening in the level, because I thought it was quite a fun level. They've gone for another interesting design like they did at Noda Fukushima to break things up a bit. So let's see what's going on in the Oda camp.
That cannot be!
But as I learns about our attack on Echizen, our lord is shot. Yoshinari is killed. Someone has to be helping the enemy.
You accuse Lady Kicho?
Very presumptuous.
Smart. Can't you come up with something a little better?
It might not be just Lady Kicho. There might be someone behind her. Right, Master Mitsuhide?
What was that? Yoshino here thinks that someone is
very awkward for Mitsuhide here.
Possibly be any traitors in this clan. Could there? Mitsuhide?
That's Araki Murashige, that random guy there, by the way.
Haven't really thought about it. But shouldn't you be moving? You'll be late for council.
So Mitsuhide is pretty unsmooth in dismissing those accusations and just walks off. But luckily they don't press too hard, so they don't find out that he actually is basically spying for our enemies. Oh well.
Alright, let's begin.
Not historically, of course, just in the legend.
According to our scouts, this is the current situation.
So Katsuie once again presents the current situation. We have a very interesting map to deal with this time around. It's a very strange shape as well. Very geographically unrealistic shape.
Asakura. We will lose if this camp is destroyed.
So Asakura being the enemy commander is the first inaccuracy.
They will reinforce us. However,
because the Asakura main force wasn't involved in this battle. So it's all about reinforcements. Both us and the enemy forces begin with very few units but are reinforced.
My lord, allow me to take the field. You won't regret it.
Toshie wants to show up, and I believe I have no choice but to take him actually.
How do you wish us to deploy?
Because the game predetermines a lot of your reinforcement units for you. At least I think it does. So yeah, you can see we start with Oda at the bottom, next to our main camp. And we have all these blue units, which are units that are going to appear at some point during the level to help out. We don't know when they're going to appear, just that they will appear at some point, and they're vague locations. And for some reason I'm forced to make Amalia one of those reinforcement units, so there we go. But I'm allowed to deploy one extra unit right in the middle of the field. For some reason, this is a very strange deployment. So looking at my units here, I was thinking I'd deploy Toshie because he's a very good defensive unit with his spears, because spear units in this game tend to have high defense stats. And if I was going to put a unit out on its own in the middle of nowhere, I wanted it to be a good defensive unit. So I decided to go for Kicho instead, because I wasn't allowed, just because Kicho is my highest level unit. And her cavalry should be able to run through the enemy units right in front of her, who are probably going to attack immediately. So I need to buy basically a little time for Nobunaga at the back line to run forward and save Kicho from being surrounded by the two units. And that should be a fairly good start. So looking at the conditions, we have send the willing off to battle is a tip, and the key is in how you switch units. So there's some pretty sketchy tips from the conditions there. Change my equipment to make everyone that little bit better. Let's head into the level and see what's going on.
With this deployment, we will destroy the enemy.
He's very confident.
Our council is at an end. You all know what you have to do. Now go! Sir!
So here we go, the battle begins. I guess I'll talk about the real story first, like usual.
Nagamasa, only one of us shall be victorious. The fate of the land lies with this battle. Attack!
very unlikely that any of the men behind him would have heard him speaking then. But anyway, so as I said before, I charged Nobunaga down to save Kicho. So we're going to see some fighting happening right here. And I think one of these enemy units charging up, this guy here, Kazumasa Isono. This guy is the historical commander of the forces of the Battle of Sawayama. He was the commander Nobunaga's forces were actually facing. And the actual battle was a siege battle. It took place in 1573, and this in the game it's taking place in 1571. So a little bit inaccurate, not too bad. It actually takes place. It takes place after the Battle of Mikawa, which is what I think the Battle of Mikawa is referring to, which I'm going to do in the next episode. So this and the next episode are in the wrong order, just so you know, historically, but it doesn't really matter since both are in the wrong time zone according to the game. So yes, siege battle, it lasted 8 months. Basically what happened was from about 1571, 1573, Nobunaga kept trying to move on Azai's territory north of Mino. But the Asakura army kept threatening to reinforce the Azai, so he basically couldn't make any decisive moves and spent 2 years walking back and forth, not really getting anywhere. You can see here in the level the first batch of enemy and allied reinforcements are shown up, so I need to redirect my forces to deal with that. So Nobunaga has been attempting to attack the Azai's territory for a while, and finally in 1573 he manages it. He manages to lay siege to Sawayama Castle, which is on top of a mountain, Mount Sawa, which is why it's called Sawayama. And I guess this time the Azai army decided not to help. The Asakura army decided not to help them out because they didn't show up, and Nobunaga successfully began the siege. So the fact that we're actually facing Asakura units in level is a little bit unrealistic, but I guess you could take it as representing the fact that the Asakura army nearby was dictating how Nobunaga could move his. It was controlling his maneuvers, which is a very powerful thing for an army to do. So I guess it's not too unrealistic that we're facing them here. I guess they just wanted to give us a chance to face some more Asakura units in the build-up to the eventual final battle of both the Azai and the Asakura in later chapters. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the siege itself. As I said, the siege lasted 8 months and was relatively bloodless. Basically, Nobunaga just starved, what was his name, Kazumasa Isono out. Isono was one of Azai's big retainers. He was the guy who, in the Battle of Anagawa, was responsible for leading the charge that broke both Hideyoshi Hashiba and Katsuie Shibata's units, which I think I mentioned during the episode about the Battle of Anagawa. So we've actually already seen this guy before a little bit. He's a fairly well-respected retainer in the Azai army. But he had his story with this battle is a little bit tragic because, of course, he eventually was forced to surrender because he ran out of food and he didn't want to sacrifice the lives of all his men, so he surrendered to Nobunaga. Nobunaga was quite nice to him, and Nobunaga actually gave him a fiefdom. He gave him command over some territory, so he basically brought him in as to become one of his own retainers and allowed him to rule part of the Oda territory, which was nice of him. However, Azai was less nice for this, I guess what he must have regarded as a betrayal. The game portrays Azai as being very obsessed with loyalty, and perhaps that was true, because what Azai did was he was holding Isono's mother hostage during this siege. Basically the tacit threat being, if you surrender during the siege, we will kill your mother. So that was inspiring him in a very iron-fisted way to keep up his efforts in the siege and attempt to resist. But he did eventually surrender, and that meant Azai had basically had to go on his word, and I believe he crucified Isono's mother in public at the Azai capital. So that was really quite harsh. I guess it's not massively uncommon as an event to happen during the Sengoku Jidai era. The use of hostages to control retainers was the done thing, but this was just, to me, an example of a particularly brutal case where really Isono had no choice but to surrender or just lose his men in the last stand, because he was very much outnumbered by Nobunaga's army. So it just seems a little bit harsh. But yeah, Isono ends up disappearing off into history. He was given this territory by Nobunaga, but eventually he decides to become a farmer and just abandons his territory, just decides not to rule it anymore, and dies unknown somewhere in central Japan. That's pretty much the story of the Battle of Sawayama. It's less a battle, more of just a series of events taking place over the course of the year 1573. So here's Azai himself.
Those who turn their back on obligation shall be destroyed by it.
And that line is possibly quite well fitting with the character who would kill his own retainer's family for their inevitable failure. We can see my army has been very spread out by the constant arrival of enemy reinforcements. Mitsuhide particularly is in trouble because his riflemen are facing an enemy cavalry unit. I believe they're horse archers. So he's not really in his strong position here. So I'm going to have to micromanage him to make sure he doesn't get annihilated by the enemy cavalry, especially fighting uphill. So yes, I make sure all my other ally units have something to do, and I focus on Mitsuhide here. Now his infantry actually has quite a strong melee attack, so I managed to knock them back and unleash a volley into them. And I thought that worked quite well, so I think I tried to do it again a little bit. You can see the enemy is trying to charge up a volley from their archery ability and failing quite miserably. So I keep managing to get the halt attack on him. That's what that little red cloud that appears means. You've just stopped them doing a special attack. Another volley. They're really really hurt now. Now I can finish them off. Oh, but not before getting hit by some arrows. Very unfortunate. So now I need to consolidate my forces. I really wanted to bring the battle down into the center of the map, because out here on these edges it's very easy to get surrounded and it's very messy, whereas in the middle I can use my big cavalry advantage to do cycle charges. But at the moment, you can see here I've got Nagamasa Azai kind of trapped in a corner. Hideyoshi is using the firewall ability to damage Azai. I decided to reduce Azai's defense using a buff. And that also cancels out the positive status effect he had, which was giving him faster movements. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, looks like Toshie and who else is that? Kicho are facing off some enemy units. And they're going to go down pretty damn easy.
Interfering with Lord Nobunaga's advance.
You can see Kicho is using European-style troops for some reason. They just seem to be better than the Japanese ones, so I've given her some lancers, which is ridiculously unrealistic. But I guess I'm just playing by the rules of the game there, so I'm going to allow myself that historical unrealism. I send Kicho off to the center. I decided to send Toshie upwards to look for items, because it seemed pretty likely to me that these corridors and edge of the map would have items in them.
Time to show your skill in battle.
And I guess I decided I didn't need Toshie and I did need Kicho, Kicho being the more powerful unit. Meanwhile, back on the other side, you can see Hideyoshi has been pretty much bashed by Nagamasa. Nagamasa is about to use his charge, so I instantly rampage him just before he uses it, and that actually stops him being able to trigger his charge. It decharges it, if you will, which means I was saved from being overrun by his cavalry. And then I just do a charge myself, hitting my own men, but it does no damage, and I'll probably have enough points already, so it doesn't matter too much for losing points due to friendly fire. And there we go, Azai has been defeated. So historically we would have already won by now. We've defeated the real enemy commander and Azai. I mean, it's not completely implausible that Azai would show up on the historical battlefield. Whereas now we've got a whole bunch of new enemy units, and it's actually the Saito, as if we hadn't seen enough of the Saito. Both Tatsuoki and Toshimitsu have showed up, but now I have the huge numerical advantage. You can see I have 7 units against the enemy's 2. The downside is that Tatsuoki has showed up right next to my main camp, and I'll automatically lose if he manages to destroy it, so I need to get back there pretty rapidly. You can see Toshie found a random object, so I got something. It was one of the notice boards, which usually give you a piece of information, but this time nothing in particular happened. But we'll see what it meant after the battle. It did do something.
Everybody, whether we live or die.
Oh, and Yoshikage Asakura is now on the field as well. You can see he's towards the top of the map. So the enemy boss has arrived, so if I defeat him I'll win instantly, but I actually want to defeat the other enemy units first so that I get more points, sweet points, because points mean prizes in this game, and the best items in the game you can't find them in levels, they're actually given to you in the post-battle if you did particularly well.
I'm here now. You have no...
There he is, Yoshikage. He should be relatively easy to kill. He just has bow units and he's going to be isolated. Fairly easy to surround. Now I mentioned earlier that it was it was possibly mean of Zahle to punish Isono for losing this siege, when it seemed like it was impossible for him to win against the overwhelming numbers and the lack of supply. However, there's one story from Japanese history which I guess shows this might not be true. A story involving our very own Katsuie Shibata. Now, around the time of the Battle of Anagawa, Katsuie became very famous for actions he did at a place called Chokoji Castle. Chokoji Castle is it's in basically the middle of Nobunaga's territory in the former Rokkaku domain. Now, we talked about the Rokkaku clan in chapter 3, I believe. What happened around the time of Anagawa was the Rokkaku clan made a resurgence. About a few thousand troops appeared loyal to Rokkaku under some commanders and started trying to rebuild the clan. And Katsuie was trapped in a castle by them with only a few hundred men. So he had a very similar scenario to Kazumasa Isono, but he resolved it in a very interesting way because he ran out of supplies almost straight away because the Rokkaku had cut off his water supply. So what he did was, on I guess the final night when it looked like they were going to run out, he took all the remaining water and he just poured it away. He drained it, smashed up all of the containers in front of all of his men. And his idea, he was trying to inspire them, and he basically told them that now that he had no water, they wouldn't have to die slowly by thirst, but they could instead die quickly, fighting to survive. So I guess it worked, and it inspired them, and they decided to lead an attack right there, right then. So all the troops charged out. They were 10 to 1 outnumbered by the sieging forces, but they were so desperate to survive, fighting with nothing to lose in this battle, that this small group managed to completely destroy the Rokkaku army on their own. So there's an example of where a hugely outnumbered sieging force can actually win a battle, and that was one of the many battles that made Katsuie Shibata be basically known as a god of war in Japan. He was called Oni Shibata, which was a title given to him pretty much around the time of his victory at Chokoji Castle. I just thought that was an interesting story. But back in the level, you can see I'm a few seconds away from winning. For the first time, I experiment with using the all attack command, which just makes every unit on the field go towards the same enemy unit, since there's only one left.
What you have to do in battle.
And then I spam a couple of abilities just to train them up, as I like to do.
I must calm down my men.
Now we just have to finish off Asakura, and there we go. This random battle has been won.
How could I lose like this?
I said it was more historically realistic than Noda Fukushima, and I guess it is because it is more based on some definite historical events. Whereas Noda Fukushima was based, as I was explaining last time, around a kind of 10-year ongoing event. Plus this battle does have actual enemy units which were there at the Battle of Sanigawa and that sort of thing. I'm hoping that the Battle of Mikawa, which as I said is supposed to represent the Battle of Nika Chikahara, is going to be more historically realistic, so I'm going to do that next. You can see I got a pretty high score. It wasn't too difficult at the stage. And I got 2 prizes, Nagamasa Asai's hat, the Helmet of Fidelity, he just loves his fidelity, and the Mounted Giselle Rifles, which is a Western style rifle unit on horseback. Very interesting looking unit, so maybe I'll try them out at some point. And these stand a bunch of levels up, and a few more skills. Some of the skills are actually getting quite good at the moment. Especially having heal is a good ability to have, means you can restore many hundreds of troops at any point. So let's see what's going on after the battle.
I never expected to meet up with Amalia here. Well, I must wish her luck. The greater this chaos grows, the better it is for us.
So we have a Portuguese mercenary stalking Amalia. So I guess he is referring to the fact that he's selling weapons, so he wants the chaos to be as intense and deadly as possible because he's going to make money selling firearms to the warlords. So maybe we'll see him again. I guess we probably will.
I see everyone's here. Let us begin this planning session. Sir!
My lord, I brought a man that shows promise.
A man that shows promise, you say?
My name is Tsune. I cannot bear to watch the innocent hurt anymore. Please allow me to fight with you to protect the innocent.
Well, we've got one feminine man right
Forces
here.
require such strategies as yours. I will depend on your wisdom.
Perhaps Katsuie was a little
Lord.
confused with the old genders. I mean, I can't imagine Katsuie as being much of a ladies'
My
man.
lord, this is the latest information on the situation.
Maybe he doesn't have much experience and got a little bit confused. I guess it was justified that Nobunaga took his wife away. You might remember Katsuie, very near the beginning of the game, was actually married to Nobunaga's sister Uichi before she was sent off to marry our now rival Nagamasa Azai. We'll be seeing Uichi again towards the end of the Azai lifetime. She will make a resurgence. So here we are, we've completed that level. So you can see at the bottom right, there's the Battle of Mikawa, the level 10 difficulty stage against the Takeda army, which I really want to do. Even though the Oda forces were barely involved in this battle, it's just an important historical battle for the era rather than for Nobunaga's journey. So I decided to show it anyway. It's more a battle involving the Tokugawa forces. There were some Oda forces there, so it's sort of justified, but it's really only a minor engagement from the Oda's point of view. But I'm going to try it out anyway, especially for the challenge of doing a level 10 difficulty battle. So I'll do some of the minor battles in the meantime, and grind at the shop, try and get my stats as high as possible, so hopefully I can actually win the battle, and show you what it's like. And I guess it'll be my first opportunity to really talk about the Takeda clan, which is one of the big powerful forces in the era, and particularly about Takeda Shingen, the leader of the Takeda clan, who's going to be there at this battle. And it's actually going to be one of his last battles because he dies very soon historically. I believe that the Battle of Mikatakahara takes place in the winter of 1572. So the game still said it was 1571. So again, it's going to be in the wrong order chronologically and slightly off. But who cares about that? So anyway, I am going to be disappearing off on a magical trip this weekend. So this episode has been released slightly early, and I might end up making the next episode slightly late as a result of having to deal with this trip and all the work that's going to be building up while I'm there. So hopefully whenever I do manage to make it, I'll see you next time on The Legend of Nobunaga for some fun level 10 difficulty action. Wish me luck.